Welcome to Your Next Level Now with your host, Bob Donlon. As a human behaviorist, Bob has helped people from every walk of life reach their next level, both personally and professionally. Whether a celebrity, professional athlete, or entrepreneur, Bob has helped them align their behavior with their desired result in their life and career. This is Your Next Level Now with Bob Donlon.
Man, this gentleman, he has done a lot more than you could probably ever put on a bio. And the more people I know that know him, the more impressed I am. And here's why: because the people that he associates with and the people that he surrounds himself with are exactly the type of people that we're looking for and the people that we want to surround ourselves with. This guy has, man, he's going to talk about, I'm going to bring out some of the things that I know about him. He was paralyzed in a football accident and came back from that. He has been in space. I mean, he has been a lot of different things and in a lot of different spaces that he's got a lot of different perspectives. He's one of the number one motivational speakers of all time. He is, inducted into the Hall of Fame for National Speakers Association. This guy has owned multiple companies. He speaks all around the world, millions of people that he's impacted. And, I'm just excited that he's going to be here tonight and that he's here with us because, you guys, I've heard him speak, and he, bar none, he blows the roof off the building that he's at because of the content, because of the delivery, but more so importantly, because he knows 100% what he's talking about because he lives it on a daily basis. And that's where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. So with that being said, Dan Clark, welcome.
Thanks, my friend. Holy cow, and what a great group. Let me just get this out of the way. I live by a snowbird ski resort in Utah. When it snows in Utah, we ski. I was in Temecula probably 2 years ago when it snowed, and most of the folks had never seen snow before. All the crazies were out on the sidewalk going. They thought it was cocaine from God. They're like, whoa, dude, I'm going to save this and buy me a new Porsche on the weekend. I love Southern California. It doesn't get any better than that. So I'm honored. I just wish I had the ocean behind me on a green screen, brother.
Yeah. Me. I wish it was real behind me right now. I love it. But I tell you, all of everything that's going on, we've had to make some adaptations and some changes. I mean, you have a big speaking career, and I know multitudes, just hundreds of thousands of dollars just immediately evaporated on you, just like you did with a lot of speakers. I want to just address that. How did you pivot? What did you do? If you don't like the word pivot, what did you do to adapt?
That's such a great question. I love quotes, and I'm fascinated by the reason why you organized your group, my friend. Based on Jim Rohn's quote, we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. And I wanted to dive a little bit deeper so I could use that quote on stage. And I always just kind of take it, wider and a little deeper by saying, if any of you own horses, you'll know that when you put a hard to catch horse in the same field with an easy to catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard to catch horses. In the human experience, when you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. So moral to the story, to be disciplined, healthy, and significant, we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings, even on the internet, even in this Zoom call. So it's not always about belly to belly. I played football for 13 years. You mentioned my career-ending injury. Yeah. And what happens as I dissect what I went through and then my rehabilitation, it occurred to me that it became, or it still is, one of the very best things that ever happened to me. Don't misunderstand me. My accident and my paralysis wasn't one of the best things that ever happened to me, but who I became as a man and what I learned about time and life and priorities as a result of going through that setback clearly makes it one of the most defining moments and periods of my life. So all this time, I've refused to call it a COVID crisis because crisis does not make or break the man or woman. It reveals the true character within. And I refuse to call it a corona pandemic because what we have to understand from my perspective is that adversity is what introduces us to ourselves. No one will ever know how strong we are until being strong is our only choice. And yet we can't do it alone. We can't just say, I'm going to start my own business. We can't just say, I'm going to make it through this. We can't just hang around with people who are going to rah us to death. Just have hope. And that's a controversial word in my life because French philosopher Pascal said, too many people live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. People are waiting for someone to ask them to the senior prom, and they've never even taken the time to learn how to dance. And people want to bring in their spirituality and their religion. And I always point out, religion is for those who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. And what we have to do is start dissecting what this word faith means, because faith without works is not faith at all. Right. So when I get through telling my story, and let me just briefly just share what happened. We were in a tackling drill in practice. Coach blew the whistle. Two of us ran into each other full speed. The only parts of our bodies that made contact, Lyle's helmet crashed into my helmet. We were 15 yards apart. It was a violent head-on collision. My shoulder pads were smashed into the cutting edge of my right deltoid was smashed into the cutting edge of my fiberglass pads, and we slammed to the ground. And when Lyle got off of me, my eye drooped. I had lost the speech. I couldn't talk anymore. My right side stayed paralyzed. My arm dangled at my side. I stayed paralyzed for 14 months. I went to 16 of the very best doctors in all of North America, 15 of whom said I would never get any better. So my question right out of the chutes, how many of us have heard that? And what happens if we believe it? We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. We need people who remind us you can't quit. It's a league rule, but not, yeah, you can if you think you can. That's bogus. I didn't get better because of a miracle. Now that I've recovered, I'm asked 2 questions. Number 1, why did I go to so many different doctors? And the answer is simple. I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. I honor you, brother. What you've organized is so extraordinary. And this will tie into this long answer to your simple question. The second most powerful question and most provocative and most frequent question asked of me is, why did I stay paralyzed physically and emotionally for so long? And the answer is simple. I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. And once we answer why, figuring out the how to becomes clear and simple. And it can't be your why. It can't be my parents' why. It can't be my coach's why. It can't be my leaders or managers' why. It has to be my own why. Because when your own why becomes bigger than your why not, you'll figure out a way to persevere.
Wow, I love that. When your personal why becomes bigger than your why not.
Yeah. And everybody says, be patient. We'll survive this pandemic. Patience allows us to never begin. We've all been raised to believe that patience is a virtue. Not always. Any virtue taken to the extreme can become a vice. Patience allows us to mindlessly wait our turn, believing that this is meant to be. This was the hand I've been dealt. There's nothing I can do about it. That's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard, and it causes a limiting belief that holds all of us back. Patience is a limiting belief. Perseverance is the higher law. It's patience with a purpose. So we proactively take our turn because we know why we should. So to your answer to your specific question,
great.
When we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, and then I tagged on that line, which means we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings. The question is, what's an extraordinary human being? It's someone who triggers more passion, creativity, imagination, and innovation. So we leave, even on an internet program, on a Zoom call, saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. Yeah. I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. This COVID so-called crisis, this pandemic is not your dream and it's not your life. We have to understand that the news is mostly fake news. Right. And our dream and our life and our ambition and our ability to recover has nothing to do with the news. It has to do with what we believe and how willing we are to persevere and put one step in front of the other. I'm standing here in my library and I'm looking out into my front entranceway, and I have a cascading staircase that goes up to the third floor where all the bedrooms are. I don't have to see the top stair to start climbing from the bottom. I only need to see value in taking one more step. And that one more step has to include our friend who's on the call from AA, from Alcoholics Anonymous, 75 plus years as the most successful non-medical solution to any addiction, any kind of addiction. And as I've studied that, the most intriguing thing to me is that if you get the first 11 steps down, the first one being you got to admit the reality.
Right.
Don't associate blame, admit the reality. That's what we're doing in the COVID situation. What is really happening? Let's acknowledge it and then stop worrying about it. What are we going to do? What's the next step? And yet everybody in AA will tell us that you can have that first step and then the other 10 steps down. You could actually be living and subscribing to those first 11 steps. But if you don't live by the 12th step, you'll start drinking again. You'll fall back into your addiction. And that 12th step is find another alcoholic, find another someone who's addicted and help him or her. So the long answer to your question is, I'm not pivoting at all. This is how I believe. This is how I live my life. And you can put any kind of an outside condition into my world and nothing changes. And the cool thing is, I've been doing virtual keynotes. I've done 2 3-hour Zoom trainings, Coca-Cola the other day for all their execs and some small business owners, 3 hours. And I realized, you know what? Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training, which means under pressure, under pressure, or let's just say pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. And when you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any pressure. That's why we train and practice so hard. So because we've lived our lives with this mindset and this heart set, remember, the mind is where we live. The heart is who we are. And too many people segregate themselves as left brain, cognitive, psychobabbling, neurotechnical learners, or I'm a right brain, relational, touchy-feely, emotional learner. And guys like you, my friend, you've figured out a way to ignite and engage both sides of your brain and connect the head with the heart. So the biological explanation of what happened to me when I recovered from my injury is that when you only focus in on a how and a what, it solely 100% only engages your mind. But if you can focus in on a why and a compelling want, which is the goal, that does more than engage your mind. It engages your mind and connects it with your heart. And the biology, the science proves that when you focus in on a why and a want, your blood flows more fluently and more powerfully. Your brain ignites and your muscles twitch. And when you only focus on a how and a what, no such emotional experience occurs. Wow. Now I've taken a breath. Ask me another question.
Well, I love the answers to that, because I knew some of that answer based on who you are and just my personal experience with you. One of the great things that I see in you is that I love the fact that you chose not to say I pivot. I think that we've given this Corona thing way too much attention. We've given it all the reason to keep going versus all the reason for it to just die. When we don't give it any attention and we don't give it, that's when we can start moving beyond it. I love Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl, right? Where that meaning, what meaning did you attribute to your being paralyzed? People say, oh, I'm paralyzed with fear. Man, paralyzed with fear is nothing like being paralyzed physically like you were. What meaning did you attach to that at that given moment that allowed you to overcome that?
That's such a great question. Let me just suggest that when you start figuring out what you're going to do instead of what is happening, it can create a limiting belief of false hope. Yeah, when I get better, instead of taking care of business right now. So You know, it's a limiting belief of parents, of coaches, of school educators, and especially business professionals who think their job as a leader is to focus on a strategic direction and only answer, where are we going? When in reality, we have to begin by answering where we are right now. It's like ordering an Uber ride that requires that we enter in our current location. If we lie about where we are, the directions won't work.
Right.
So what happened with my rehab is exactly what happens now. I've gone downrange to entertain our troops and fire them up 8 different times, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Wow.
Anybody want to go? I'm one phone call away from just putting together another tour.
I want to go. I want to go.
When I come home, I'm fascinated. I'm empathetic about what they call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a real thing. But the new science has been so fascinating to me because it answers how I got better, how I recovered physically and emotionally from my paralysis, and what we all need to believe as we go through this COVID wilderness experience. Because everyone that I've ever met that has achieved anything in their life has had a wilderness experience, but they don't go into the wilderness, they go through the wilderness. So here's the new science, and it relates to Alcoholics Anonymous. It relates to every single challenge we have in our lives. The new science is there's no post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not a disorder. It's not a syndrome. So drop the D. It is PTS. And here's the new science that answers your question, that elevates my excitement to how we recover no matter what happens. We look at it as an injury. Because when you look at PTS, when you look at alcoholism, when you look at addiction, when you look at a physical injury like I had, as an injury, this is what I've figured out in my life. If you go through every single step of rehabilitation and do exactly what you're supposed to do and then take it to the next level, the part of your body that was injured becomes stronger than it was before you injured it. Scar tissue is an awesome metaphor for life. My shoulder, I still have mobility, but my right shoulder is still totally numb. I had an invitation tryout out of high school by the Kansas City Royals as a baseball pitcher. That was my best sport. When I was hurt as a projected #1 draft pick by the Raiders, it was my right side. Everything ended in 1 second, in one moment in time. But here's what I've discovered. I came back, but my right shoulder is still totally numb, which means I couldn't generate any muscle mass and I could no longer be an athlete. But that memory alone, every single day feeling like a wild animal is biting my deltoid, reminds me about what we're talking about. I never get complacent. I never take anything for granted. And it's like, bring it on. I already said adversity introduces us to ourselves. Come on, baby. You don't know how strong you are or what you can do until you're tested. So here's what's happened. Because I went through every single step of rehabilitation, I recovered. And that applies to our hearts. When we get a broken heart, when we go through a devastating loss of a loved one, a devastating divorce, the loss of a job, what are you supposed to do? Well, here's the reality, and I had this experience at a family dinner a while ago. We gathered together, all our kids came into town, and some of them invited friends. We're sitting around the formal dining room, and we always play an icebreaker game. Remember when? Remember when we were 9? Remember when we were at the lake at 13? Remember when, Joe fell off the boat and we forgot and we came back like an hour later, he's floating. It came to my turn. I remember when I came home with a report card, had 4 Fs and 1 D. My dad's response, son, looks to me like you're spending too much time on one subject. You got to look at my dad. And then we got to one of my daughter's friends and she broke down crying. She's sobbing. And I said, are you all right? She says, no. She said, I'm 31 years of age. I just went through a divorce. I just got fired from my job and my mother was just diagnosed with breast cancer. I mean, you could feel the tension in the dining room. What do you say? My daughter consoled her. And I said, you know what? With all due respect, no one ever, don't know. And then through her tears, she says, I've hit rock bottom. And my daughter put her arm around her and we consoled her. And I said, with all due respect, no one ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock belief. We hit rock foundation. We hit the core values on which we were raised. And if our organizations hit a bump in the road, we don't pivot. If you're prepared, you shall not fear. I love hanging out with Marcus Marcus Luttrell and Robert O'Neill, a couple of my buddies have been on the program together. But downrange, hanging out with the Navy SEALs after hours, a bonfire, and listen to their stories, they will remind us that an armored up warrior never has to get ready. He stays ready. There's no reason to pivot. So when our organizations hit the bump in the road or the economy goes south, our organizations never hit rock bottom. They hit rock belief. They hit the governing principles on which they were raised. So the question, which is what you're about in this organization, is your belief strong enough, deep enough, and true enough to empower you to be able to respond to rapid change? Because if we're not failing a few times, it means we're not pushing ourselves hard enough. Bring on COVID, call it whatever you want, the Wuhan woo-woo. I don't give a rat's wackazoodle what they call it. It's just another bump in the road. And if our belief system is strong enough, deep enough, and true enough, and our core values are so visible in the way we live, the way we think, the way we treat one another, and truly everyone leaves us saying, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again, I don't give a rat's wackazoodle how long we're away from each other. They shouldn't be calling it social distancing. They should be calling it physical distancing because we're socially interacting, right, and we need that. Right. Again, amen, because of the individuals whom you attract to this program.
Yeah, amen. I appreciate that. I appreciate everything you're saying about that. You've hit on so many great points, and I think one of the things I want to draw out is what we call something, right? We don't have to answer just because we're called something. And, when you were called paralyzed and you went to many doctors that said you were, how did you say, regardless what they say, this is what I believe? How did you do that? Because I know a lot of people right now are thinking, I'm out of work. I don't, my marriage is falling apart. And they're having a hard time coming back to go, what now? How did you do that? And what would you speak to that person, like that woman, that your daughter's friend?
I would have an evaluation. I would use 3 E's. I'm a songwriter. I got some gold records in country music.
I love that.
I should pull out my guitar and sing a couple of my hits. Had I shot you when I met you, I'd be out of jail by now. That's my wife ran off with my best friend, and I'm going to miss him dearly. That's a tearjerker. But what happens is, as a songwriter, I think kind of in a mellow, melodic way. Let's focus in on 3 E's. This is not a pandemic. It's not a COVID crisis. It's a pause and purge, which illuminates 3 E's. It's a chance for us to evaluate our lives, our relationships, our systems of success that we want to take to significance. The second E is eliminate all the fluff. We all invest in real estate. It's just an awesome investment. And I've got so many buddies who are just, they're in bad shape right now because they own so many commercial real estate buildings. And the rumor is I don't need to fight the traffic and commute for 45 minutes or an hour and a half or 3 hours in LA to go to an office when now I've perfected my operation from home. Yeah. And if you think about it, that commute time and the meals and the gas and hopping on an airplane, that deletes our opportunity to make a difference and really interact with the people whom we love and need in our lives. So what we need to do is eliminate all the fluff and realize we didn't really need to pay that high rent in a business building after all.
Yeah.
It's what we do when the coach is not around that makes us a champion athlete. It's what we do when our parents are not around that makes us a champion kid. It's what we do when the employer is not around that makes us a champion employee. So here's a chance for us to actually test our relationship based on trust and integrity. Are you going to put in as many hours and work as hard and be as innovative as you were in the office if you actually work from home? If I can trust you to do that, remember, sales is the transference of trust. Leadership is the transference of trust. Coaching, parenting is the transference of trust. Do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do when I'm not around.
Yeah.
And we can solve the dilemma just by putting our emphasis in that. But let me just put something else into play here. I do a lot of team building. I've worked with most of the teams in the National Football League, most of the Fortune 500 companies. And you still, to this day, in the 21st century, go to a corporate event and someone shows up as a consultant. They think team building is, here's a box of some popsicle sticks and some rubber bands. Here's a couple of pieces of cardboard, make a boat. And 30 minutes later, or make a tower, and then we're going to judge who has the highest tower. That's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever seen. But what it does is it illuminates the fallacy that team building is about a physical interaction. It's now we know for a fact it's about spirit to spirit, heart to heart, trust to trust. Team building is about the purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders who believe what you believe, not generate more followers. And when everybody in the organization believes what we believe and we subscribe to the same high performance standards, it's amazing what can happen when everybody in the organization believes what we believe. We all hold ourselves accountable. Self-mastery becomes permanent, winning becomes personal, and leadership becomes automatic.
Love that. Love it. You know, you brought up something about Marcus Luttrell and O'Neill, and I got a chance to hear those two gentlemen speak, amazing people. You know, you talked about they don't have to get ready, they stay ready. What do you do to stay ready, and what do you encourage people to do to stay ready?
You have to have you have to understand the brain chemicals. Endorphins can be ignited and triggered by other people, especially through humor. Dopamine is so incredibly important to all of us. And what occurs when we actually take out a pen and write something on a piece of paper, a goal? We start the morning with a huddle. The night before we think about, okay, what are we going to do? And it's not a to-do things. It's not a to-do list, things to do. In the morning, you start off with an actual plan of attack. And I had an experience a while ago. I was on the program with Brendan Burchard. What a good man.
Yeah.
And on stage, he said, and the audience was filled with some pretty high-level folks. And he said, does anybody feel comfortable enough letting me look into their daytime, or let me look into their journal, let me look into their day planner? And some guy raises his hand and he takes it up there, and Brendan Burchard, he goes, I hope you can take this because you're never going to be successful. We all kind of giggled, and I'm like, I'm glad I didn't show him mine. But then I wish I had, because what he said was, you can tell a lot about a human being just by looking at their calendar. Have they actually planned to listen to this podcast and this podcast the night before, so they're not wasting time trying to go through the menu? Have they actually invested in themselves? You were talking about Cindy. She does everything. Miss Hurley goes to this and this, and she signs up for that and buys that book. Well, why not? And that is how we take ourselves from success to significance. That's how we control our stars. That's how we change our stars. So the easy question is, I've read one book a week for the last 16 and a half years. I'm in my library. I've read every single one of these books in here. I've written 35 books, and my mom says, yeah, you've written more books than you've ever read. I'm like, come on, Mom, cut me some slack. But we need continuous education. And we need programs like yours. We need opportunities to meet in a restaurant once we can again, to get that human touch, because the human touch really, it ignites oxytocin and serotonin and these drugs that these chemicals in our brains that are mostly triggered through physical touch and connection. So we don't want to just blow that off. We still need to have these interactions. But when it comes to leadership and team building and inspiring others, we have to first inspire ourselves and realize, whoa, what do I have to do to trigger my own endorphins, to trigger my own dopamine, to get my own second wind going? And that's about having a tangible thing, a reason to wake up in the morning and do something that's beyond what we've done in the past. It's like going to a gym. This cracks me up. We go to a gym, and the goal is to spend one more minute on the treadmill or the elliptical than we did the day before, to put a little bit more weight on, to hold ourselves, in the position in a yoga class a little bit longer without making farm animal noises in the back like I usually do. And then when we leave the yoga studio, when we leave the gym, what do we say? Man, I sure hope I don't have any obstacles today. I sure don't want any pressure. I don't want to have any tough times. It's not reality. And that's why we have to make a goal, make a list of something in the day, and then stop focusing in on the goal, because goals are only an excuse for the game. We play the game in between the goals. You spend 99 yards in a football game doing your best to get to the end zone, but once you score, if you spend longer than 15 seconds in the end zone, you get flagged for excessive celebration, and it's a 15-yard penalty. So at some point in time, we've got to learn to enjoy the journey. And that's what it's all about. Today's a brand new day to start another journey, or at least make one long leap on that same journey that will take me to the next stopping point, the next place.
Yeah.
And there's so many podcasts. I have a podcast just getting ready to launch. I've interviewed so many just impressive people, and it's something that we need to look forward to. And I've decided to keep my podcast to 25 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. And I've got Charlie Colleen this next week. He wrote Calling All Angels and Cups of Jupiter, major founder of Train. I got John Mayer. I got, Derek Huff. I got Ted Nugent. He's a piece of work. I've got Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped.
Wow.
It's just been so extraordinary. And if you think about what a 25-minute speech, 25-minute interview can do to change your day, why not let it change your day? We can't always control what happens, but we can always control what happens next.
Yes. Agree so much. Dan, you've been exposed to a lot of amazing people over the course of your lifetime. If you could go back and revisit one of those people and spend an entire day with one of those people, and it may be somebody you know intimately or maybe somebody that you just experienced, who would that person be?
No question, Ronald Reagan.
I
was brought into the Reagan White House back in the 80s to take Mrs. Reagan's Just Say No program, positive choice program, to all 50 states. That's why I know where Yorba Linda is and Anaheim Hills, and I've spoken at El Dorado High School and Esperanza and all those commencements. I've spoken at every single high school in Orange County. So between 1983 and 1989, I spoke in thousands and thousands of high schools to almost 6 million teenagers in all 50 states. And to see how much integrity, what a great communicator, how he thought of America first, and how he was so full of integrity. You knew you could trust the political system, you could trust our president. And we all craved to have that feeling once again in the White House. And that's not to throw President Trump under the bus. I'm not doing that. But when you put 8 years of Obama and 8 years of Clinton, and you see what happened to our foreign policy as I travel the world, regardless if you're Republican or Democrat, it's time for all of us to be Americans. And learn the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, understand free market systems, become a capitalist, which is the country in which we live, an economic driven organization. And then on top of that, as we make more money, we can make more of a difference. It's not about money, we know that. And with all due respect to your contingency here, brother, maybe I could just give a Christian example from the Bible.
Absolutely.
Too many people say that money is evil. And I'm like, no, it's not. There's a lot of corrupt folks who have a lot of dough.
Sure.
But money is not evil. The love of money is evil. So the example from the Bible is the same coinage that the Good Samaritan used to better his community and serve his fellow men is the exact same coinage that Judas Iscariot used to betray Jesus. It's not about the money. It's about who we are and how we're going to use the money that we make. And we need to make as much money as we possibly can and pay as much tax as we can to help the world, but we've got to do it for the right reasons. And that's because we believe in America. Let me just, since I'm on this rant for a second, let me just drag us all back to September 11th. This is so critically important. The purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders who believe what you believe, not generate more followers. Okay? Which means living in America does not make you an American. On September 11th, when those terrorists hijacked the planes and attacked us, they did not attack our country. They did not try to overthrow a government. They did not try to capture a landmass in a war. They attacked what we believe in. And what we believe in is all those things that I just listed. And when you hear these politicians get on TV and pontificate about we should do this and we should do that, it's clear in my mind that so many of them do not understand the Constitution. They've never read the Declaration of Independence. They don't know what we believe in. And being a resident in our country does not make you an American. It's what we believe. And it's important for those of us who are trying to say something that keeps being shunned. Facebook, you say something that's controversial or contrary to what Facebook believes, and they take your video right off.
That's right.
I mean, that's a violation of our freedom of speech. Yeah. At some point, we've got to stand up and say, no, this is America. This is what we believe, and this is why we believe it. And we have this system in place, regardless of what you believe about it or not. Let's keep America rolling. And that's why I love and adore and admire and believe in the Ronald Reagan. And we have lots of Ronald Reagans in our world, both men and women. I'm just pleading that they will step up and finally take a stand in this crisis where the only people who seem to have a voice are those who agree with the media. That's wrong.
Right. Yeah. Completely in agreement with what you're saying there. And I've got to ask the question because I think as a human behaviorist, I have my beliefs. I'm fascinated by the direction you're going with this. So I want to know why you think so many people who have a voice have given their voice up.
Well, I'll just share an experience, and it answers the question by itself, if I may. I started doing United Nations leadership training way back in 1991. In 1989, the Berlin Wall came down, and Let Freedom Ring was in every part of the world. Excuse me. In Glasnost, the collapse of the Soviet Union was well underway in 1991. I went with an 8-member team for 15 days to the former Soviet Union. In 1991, it kept going back every 6 months. And when I arrived, the government had collapsed. They had no funding for athletes, no funding for special needs children, no funding for the hospitals. And I would produce these shows. Sometimes 3,000 people would come, and they were always military leaders, educators, and healthcare professionals. And I just fell in love with Russia and the Russian people. It was so amazing how they emphasized the things that matter to me: family and education, the arts, military, and obviously medicine. And I was the first American to speak on national Russian television. I could have started World War III. When I announced to my family I was going, my mom was so nervous. She's like, "Are you serious?" And I showed up, and because I was using a translator on stage in real time with 3,000 folks in the audience on this particular occasion, it was broadcast live to all 15 Commonwealth of independent states. So Ukraine and Hungary and all of them were there. They were all tuned in. And my speech took about a little bit longer than 90 minutes because I had to interact with this translator in real time. But because it was broadcast live, I've got a twisted sense of humor, and I convinced my United Nations team, especially the guy who spoke fluent Russian and fluent English, that we could get permission to go back to Moscow 1, the government-owned and operated television station that broadcast my speech, tongue in cheek. I wanted to make sure that the translator gave the same speech that I did.
Right.
Because they all laughed at different times. I'm like, that didn't go over well. I wonder what he's saying. And when we pulled into the parking lot of Moscow 1, the government-owned and operated television station, there were 4 tanks parked back to back to back to back in all of the 4 directions. There were 3 levels of barbed wire, amazing over-the-top security, AK-47 carrying soldiers creeping around in the shadows.
Wow.
The television station was the most highly guarded and fortified building in all of Moscow. It wasn't the Kremlin, it wasn't the White House where I'd had a chance to speak. It was the television station. Why? He or she who controls the hearts and minds of the people controls the people.
Wow.
So we have these conspiracy theorists, and we have folks saying that China started this and they drop bomb, that this is a chemical warfare. They're not even having to shoot. It's all about the chemicals. And that China has lied about the numbers. I laugh about North Korea. They say we don't even have 1 case. And I'm like, that's just the funniest thing I've ever heard. But we all also have our own politicians, fake news. And then all of a sudden we have a doctor, a reputable doctor, some of whom are from Southern California, and they post a video saying, this is not what's happening. And all of a sudden their video's taken down and you're like, what is really going on here? So from my perspective, it literally scares me to death, which means we have to be judicious in our source of truth. If you want to learn about Hillary, you don't ask Trump. If you want to learn about Trump, you don't ask Hillary.
Right.
If you want to learn about Jesus stumbling towards the cross, you don't ask Judas Iscariot. You ask Peter, James, or John. You ask Mary, his mother. You don't need to go out into the fake news world and believe everything that we hear, because most of it, in my experience, and that's why I just shiver, I've been in situations where I've been an eyewitness and I look on the news and all three major stations are telling us a completely different story.
Yeah.
It's the biggest bunch of crap. But having said that, we still have to live. So why not isolate ourselves? I don't even know what's going on because I refuse to watch the television news. They're so corrupt. And in the first 13 seconds, you can tell if they're pro-Trump or anti-Trump.
Absolutely.
In the first 90 seconds, you can tell if they're a legislator from the state of California.
Right.
With all due respect.
That's true.
Because you know they've never read the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. They're dumber than a box of mayonnaise. Don't even get me started. Oh my goodness.
You know what? One of the next level.
Focus on truth. Let's focus on what can we do now, not tomorrow. What can we do right now? And the way I came back from my injury, don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do.
Amen. Amen. You know, one of the next level pillars that I talk about is that the problem with experts is you can find one to tell you anything you want to hear. Ask an attorney, and they'll find an expert for or against the argument that they've got to do in court. And so, you know, I'm with you on that. We constantly have that challenge. What's the truth? And we can always find a truth, but can we find the truth? That's going to be up to our discipline, I guess, to do that. So, you know, you mentioned in some of your talks, you've talked about different things, but one of the stories you mentioned was Tampa Bay versus Dallas. And I love that story because I think it's so insightful into who are we surrounding ourselves with, and what are we surrounding ourselves with, and then that's going to give us a perspective, and that perspective is going to lead us to our outcome. Can you kind of recount that story? It was such a great story.
If I may, let me just throw out a limiting belief that we're all familiar with. You know, I live in Utah, originally from Arizona, and I've known Stephen Covey since 1975. My girlfriend's dad was his first cousin. Wow. And when we started kind of going down the same road and everything, we spent so much time. So I honor him as a great thought leader and a great guru. Amen. But one of his 7 habits cracks me up because I'm sure everyone on this broadcast has read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And after I read the book, Covey writes another book called The 8th Habit, and I immediately emailed him and said, calm down. We don't need any more habits. We already have enough. I'm working on this. I got 4 of your 7 down, and now you want me to do something else. I said, you need to go take a nap. And one of his 7 habits, which everyone seems to still quote after all these years, is begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
And that creates a limiting belief. Stay with me. When we begin with the end in mind, it forces us to focus on a destination that's impressive, do our very best to manage people and reward results. And that's a fallacy, and it screws us up. And here's why. If your goal is to lose 22 pounds, you gain 30 pounds back celebrating that you arrived at the destination. And too many of us put too much emphasis on the destination, with all due respect. And I can't share the story without mentioning his name. I went to the Army-Navy football game with Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon, and Frank Borman, another great astronaut. And I was intrigued by his life because after he walked on the moon and began with that end in mind, every bit of his training, every thought, every dream was about walking on the moon. He's the second man on the moon's surface. Several years after he walked on the moon, he was divorced, bankrupt, homeless, and alcoholic because he focused on the destination. And once you check that box, I mean, with all due respect, He walks on the moon. What else is there to get a cottage in Yorba Linda? No. You know, to buy a duplex in Temecula? Come on, you're supposed to be laughing at this. This is supposed to be a little bit lighter than it is. What else is there after you've walked on the moon?
Yeah.
What would happen if you begin with the why in mind, which inspires us to focus on a journey that's important and manage expectations and reward effort, which means there's never a destination. What we're trying to do is become better today than we were yesterday. We raised our children on a few mantras, one of which was the only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. Amen. So we've got to stop competing against others. And this is a longer answer to your simple question. I will get back to it, but I want to make a point here because it just came into my mind. You know, good to great, Jim Collins, 50% of his examples of great organizations were obsolete within 9 years after publication. It came out in 2001. By 2009, where's Circuit City? Where's Borders? Where's Blockbuster? Where's Kodak? Where's Fannie Mae? Single-handedly brought down the economy of the universe. People on Mars are pissed off at Fannie Mae. Like, what happened here? And the reason why is because he focused in on the qualities that these organizations shared that made the leap from good to great, but he failed to also identify the cancerous, convoluted qualities that they also shared that would eventually bring about their demise. So they were focusing on the wrong thing, and it was all about a destination. It was all about a comparative analysis. Your company is a great organization because of X, Y, Z. I'm like, that's bogus. And yet everybody still buys the book and we buy into it. We've got to stop. Here's what happens when we buy into best.
Great point.
Best. To illustrate, best is only relevant depending on what you compare it against. A few years ago, I was the keynote speaker in Buffalo, New York at an international conference on eating disorders. So as a professional speaker, I read everything I could get my hands on anorexia and bulimia to come in as a closet, expert, if you will. And as I'm sitting there waiting to be introduced, they kept calling it an eating disorder, and it confused me because it doesn't have one thing to do with food. So I'm introduced and I'm doing my thing and we're laughing and I'm engaging and we're connecting, but the whole time I'm assessing the audience and I'm trying to focus in on one woman who I can tell is so strong and so confident, and so smart and so sassy that she'll allow me to interact with her in front of the whole room. And I singled her out and let's just say her name's Andrea. And I said, Andrea, you don't have to answer my questions verbally, but please engage with me and everyone else answer my questions. Andrea, are you tall or are you short? Are you wide or are you thin? Are you fast or are you slow? Are you smart or are you stupid? Are you pretty or are you pretty ugly? Says who? Compared to what? And when I said, are you smart or are you stupid? I still remember this woman in the audience. She kind of twins like, are you freaking kidding me? What did you say? So I buffered the moment by saying Albert Einstein said everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life believing it is stupid. Yeah. So then back to Andrea, I said, if we could somehow transport Andrea to a deserted island where you had absolutely no access to fashion magazines or these Photoshop Twiggy models, would you not just love yourself for who you are? I am woman, hear me roar. I am so sophisticated and elegant. I am so graceful. I'm so this, I'm so that. We've got to stop asking ourselves, do I compete? Am I smart enough? Am I beautiful enough? Am I handsome enough? Am I skilled enough? And just take what we have right now and do something right now with what we have. And that brings me to your simple answer, the comparison contrast between Tampa Bay Buccaneers in last place and the Dallas Cowboys, who won the Super Bowl in the same season. So here's my story. I'm paid big bucks to go and work with teams in the NFL. And I'm invited in to work with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers had lost 26 games in a row. The 9 of us on this call that I can see on the screen, we could lose 26 games in a row and we wouldn't even have to practice. We could just be kicking back, in Steve's hammock, eating freaking bombs and we could lose 26 games in a row. After their 13th loss, thank God their coach, John McKay, had a great sense of humor. After the 13th loss, the sportscaster sticks the camera in his face and he says, Coach, how do you feel about the execution of your team? He says, I'm all for it. That's one of the greatest lines of all time.
Love that.
So I walk into the headquarters office of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, last place, coagulated group of losers. And here's the point. They have a team. So I love to ask my audiences, and now you know I'm a maverick renegade. I love to yank people's change and challenge the status quo. You know, in medicine, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. We know that. So we've all been trained and conditioned to believe that in order to get a better answer, we got to ask a better question. We know that. But when are we going to pause and purge and evaluate, eliminate, and elevate long enough for us to question the answers? And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's why my message has never changed in all these years, 35 years on the platform. And so what we need to do is ask you a question that I love to ask everyone, and all of you can participate in your own mind. How many of you agree that it's all about team? I can see you, Michael. How many of you agree that it's all about team? And we all agree. Wrong answer. It's not all about team. Teams lose, Cleveland Browns. Teams lose, my Oakland Raiders. Teams lose, New York Yankees. Teams lose. Whoever said it's not whether you win or lose, the count's probably lost.
That's right.
Are there companies going bankrupt as we're on this Zoom call? Yeah, and they have a team. And yet you'll hear consultant after consultant show up and say, there's no I in team. Another one of those limiting beliefs that we've all been reeled in to believe. There's no I in team. Hey, there's no I in sucks either. There's no I in last place. There's no I in loser. But if you want to play this spelling bee game, let's play it. There's no I in team, but there's two I's in winning. And the first I represents independent individual preparation. Don't let me be the weak link. Don't let me run 95 yards through my 3 feet of real estate to score the winning touchdown and defeat my team. Please don't let me be the wuss. Don't let me be the weak link. Second I in winning represents interdependent collaboration, which is a commitment to contribute. So yes, you were right. It is about team. They don't give Super Bowl rings out one at a time. But the teams that win have the greatest number of individual I players on them. Think about it.
Wow.
So the way I transform these last place teams into Super Bowl champions is to make sure that we focus on the individual. Let me yank your chain. Let's just get into this. I can still see Michael on the screen, but I can't see anybody else except Bob. Is baseball, let's just cut to the chase, is baseball a team sport? Okay, Michael's kind of raised, he's shaking his head. He's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm usually sauced by the seventh inning stretch. It's not a team sport. Think about it. Baseball is an individual sport. The pitcher, I was a pitcher, the pitcher's mound is 60 feet, 6 inches from home plate. And there's 9 players. He has 8 teammates, and they don't even participate until he throws the one ball that can only be one place on that one field at a time. So it's mono on mono. It's the pitcher against the batter. And if the batter swings and hits it, there's still just one ball that can only be one place on the field going to one player. And that player either successfully fields it and throws it to first base, and the first baseman either catches it or boggles it. And the guy who fields it, it either goes through his legs or he screws up or he doesn't. It's a one-on-one game. And I don't want 8 superstar I players, as I've called them, and have one wuss who stayed out all night, who's got challenges at home with his relationship so he can't concentrate, his mind's somewhere else. What we've got to do is make sure that every single person on that team is committed to living by what I call the 10 commitments of building a winning organization. And I don't have time to get into those, but they're clarity, character, confidence, consistency, competitiveness. Remember, the only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. And contribution, which I hope you'll allow me to tell a great story I've used in the NFL.
Yes, please.
And the second I brings out the last 4 C's. Cause, why? Once your why is bigger than your why not. Chemistry, we're all chemists. Collaboration, it's not about who's right, it's about what's right. And conclusion, those 10 C's. And if you have everybody on your team subscribing to those 10 commitments, you will not just win, but that's why I chose winning. You'll create a dynasty. You'll leave a legacy. And we can create champions who rise to the occasion because of personal accountability, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of themselves. So having said that, let me just take you back to the early 1990s. Tampa Bay had lost every single game, but they had a team. Whoa, they had uniforms. It was in shambles. Their headquarters office was like a trailer park out by the airport. I walk into their headquarters office door, and my first impression is the receptionist sitting behind her counter, chewing her gum, chewing her cud, big cud. She has on a cool little headset. And when I show up, she had that attitude, that little chip on her shoulder, like, hey, I could get some things accomplished if it wasn't for these blasted interruptions. And she looks at me and she says, yeah, I shared with whom I was there to visit. She doesn't get up and give me any personal customer assistance. She buzzes me through this little clinical sterile gate. I said, thanks. I walk past her counter, and behind her counter is a table with 4 unmatched chairs around it. It looks like a garage sale. When I find my way to the meeting room, there in the corner of the meeting room is a stack of 4 old Pizza Hut pizza boxes, trash all over the floor. And when I interviewed every single one of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers football players and asked them one question, why are you here? Their answer, I'm here to play football. That's it, yeah. My cholesterol count's higher than my SAT scores. Right the wall. Last place, coagulate a group of losers, and all they wanted was a paycheck. All they wanted was a job. They had no passion, no creativity, no imagination. No one left the locker room. No one left the field saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. They had not caught the vision that the purpose of a team, forming a team, is to win. And they completely lost sight of that. Isn't that interesting? Let me interrupt. I hope a lot of you have been watching The Last Dance, chronicling the Chicago Bulls and their 6 world championships, and especially Michael Jordan. You know what occurred to me? Not once did Michael Jordan worry about a shoe contract, a shoe deal, an endorsement, a new contract, or making a lot of money. He was focused in on one thing, becoming the best player, the very best basketball player he could possibly be. And because we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, and we could talk about increasing our frequency of feedback, it also allowed him and inspired him and empowered him to become the best basketball player of his generation. Because he always had someone challenging him, and he would make up stuff in his mind. You can't. And he'd say, oh, yeah, watch me. And as Charles Barkley and a lot of the other boys would say, oh, no, don't piss him off. Here we go. And I've interviewed Michael Jordan. I've played golf with him. I hung out with him. I asked him, why do you want the ball every single game in the last 4 minutes of the game? Pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability. When you know what you've been trained to do, there's never any question. There's never any pressure. You see how my quotes start to make sense?
Yep.
So comparison, contrast, last place Tampa Bay Buccaneers with first place Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if any of you are a Dallas Cowboy fan right now. You could joke, Michael, yeah, but that, you didn't convince me, bro. You're looking at me like, man, if we could just get all the guys out of jail on the same weekend, we could win. You know how tough it must be to be a Dallas Cowboy fan right now? They're all on probation. They can't even huddle up. You can't affiliate with a known felon. They're like, man, you got to stay further away from me. The frequency on my ankle bracelet's really acting up, man. We're all going to get arrested. What's the next play? But in the 1990s, they were America's team. They won 3 Super Bowls, 2 in a row, lost. I came in, I take a little credit. They won the 3rd one. Walk with me into the headquarters office of the Dallas Cowboys and comparison, contrast that with the experience of last place Tampa Bay. Have access to the same employee pool, the same opportunities, the same salary cap, the same experiences. Well, what's the difference? Here's the intriguing part. I walk into the door of the headquarters office of the Dallas Cowboys, and everything is glass and brass and crystal and leather. Everything's perfectly in its place. They even have their own name, Valley Ranch. Do you understand the significance and power of names? Can you give me a Kleenex here, Bob? It might not even be a Kleenex tissue. Can you Xerox this for me? It wasn't even a Xerox copier. Yeah. Do you realize I ride a Harley Davidson? Do you realize people out there have Harley Davidson tattooed on their body. With all due respect, I've never seen a dude in the mall with like Taco Bell on his bicep. Yeah, oh, represent. What's up, homie?
Right.
And I walk in and I'm greeted by the receptionist. Total class, sophisticated elegance, polished professional, big giant Dallas do. Wanted to tap her on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, have you ever found any spiders on the 5th floor of your do?" And how was I greeted? Ha! Welcome to the world champion headquarters of America's favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. It's a great day. May I help you? I almost threw up all over the top of the counter. No one's ever that sweet. No one. And she didn't buzz me through some little clinical sterile gate like I had at Tampa Bay. She got up and made me feel like I was the single most important person who ever walked in that door. She personally escorted me to our meeting. As we passed down the hall, she introduced me to every single person in every office. I felt like we were going steady. And by the time we got to the meeting, it was the most amazing thing on the planet. Every single person there was focused in on one thing. And when I had a chance to interview every single one of the Dallas Cowboys football players and ask them the exact same question, why are you here? They got this internal bold intensity, seemed to ooze from every pore. They seemed to stand a little taller, a little straighter. They got right in my face and they said, "We're here to win the Super Bowl." Wow. That's the difference. Remember, the purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders who believe what you believe, not generate more followers. Let's just tie into that into culture creation in our families, in our children's schools, in our sports teams, and in small businesses and Fortune 500 companies, because the formula for creating a culture, a winning team culture, subscribing to my 10 commitments to building a winning team. I wish we had time to go into that, but the culture creation is so significant. It's my formula. A culture, every culture, culture is created, stay with me, between the strongest belief, the highest expectation, and the best behavior that the leader lives by, and the weakest belief, the lowest expectation, and the worst behavior that the leader tolerates. Operative word, believes and lives by and tolerates. So let me give you an example about parenting. One of my 35 books, The Art of Raising Significant Children. We're not gurus, we just had some experiences. Let's talk. Most of us probably have children, and we're all guilty. What happens when we try to choose our children's friends? It forces them to have two sets of friends. Those they really hang out with, and those they feel comfortable dragging home and parading in front of us for our approval. That's why we have so many parents, mothers who are sobbing, "I had no idea my daughter was involved in this." Fathers, "I had no idea my son was doing this." And they're beside themselves, and they're brokenhearted. What we have to do is open our doors with non-judgmental friendship, unconditional love, and invite our children into our home with their friends and make our place the fun place, the cool place, the place that has a higher standard of performance excellence. And here's the kicker. As we have our children growing up, we raise our children different than most other parents. And we all know on this call, we cannot organize a parent meeting and agree to raise our children all the same. It's not going to happen. So what did we do? We created our culture based on our values and our expectations in our home. So when anyone comes in, regardless if it's a teenager, a young kid, or an adult, they know in our home, there's no vulgarity. There's no sexism. There's no racism. There's no bigotry. There's absolutely no gossip. When we had my children's, my daughters, 3 daughters, 1 son, when we had our daughter's friends around in our family room downstairs, there might have been 20 one day. And I said, "Hey, no drama. We don't have drama. We can't gossip." And I had all their attention. And I said, "Let's just talk. If one of you in this room of 20 says something bad about someone and gossips about someone who's not here, the second you leave our home, every single one of you is going to leave wondering what they're saying about you when you're not around." It violates our trust, and the definition of sales is a transference of trust, leadership, coaching, parenting, the transference of trust. So we set a higher standard of performance when they come into our home. That's what we expect. We can do that in our companies. In the military, I'm so fascinated by spending time downrange. 8 times to Iraq, Afghanistan, firing up the troops. with the personal conversations with the SEALs and the Special Forces and the air combat controllers from the Air Force. And I'm always reminded, Bob, this is so intriguing to our conversation. On September 11th, some of my buddies were at the Pentagon. And while thousands were running out of the burning building, screaming, first responders, police officers, firefighters, and men and women in uniform were running back into the burning building. Were they born that way, or is it made? We have all this AI, artificial intelligence. We have so much technology. Firefighters actually have helmets with masks on with high-tech apparatuses that allow them to see through the smoke and actually get to the cause of the fire. But that high-tech equipment does not replace the heart and courage it takes to run into that flame. Well, we can get all the high-tech weapons we want and give them to all of our military, brave fighting warriors. And it doesn't replace the bravery and the courage. John Wayne said, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway. So if they believe that they can run towards the guns, why can't we? And if we can't, man, I got better things to do. And if you want to, hang around with Bob, hang around with this association. I'm telling you, we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. Jim Rohn made that famous, but I'm riding that wave, baby. That is so profound, and I honor you for just hanging on to that hat. And we only need that one quote to hang on and galvanize us together as a special group of like minds.
Yeah,
it's so critically important. We do not tolerate this, and this is what we believe, but more importantly, we don't just practice what we preach only what we practice, so you can see that we live the values. And we don't tolerate this, so we're not self-righteous. And when you can get everybody in the family, everybody on the team, everybody in your company to believe what you believe, you don't have to babysit. And increasing performance and productivity takes care of themselves.
Man,
it's so easy, man.
I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing so much of that. And I know you have got so many great stories. But I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask a question of you that wants to ask a question. So if anyone wants to come on, I see Andrea has already raised her hand. So guys, you can raise your hands. Andrea, go ahead and bring yourself on. And if we can just have everyone stay off camera until, and have Andrea bring herself on now. Andrea? There she is.
Be nice.
We have to unmute yourself. Here, I can do it. Well, I thought I could. It's not letting me unmute you. There we go.
Can you hear me? Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me now? Okay.
Yes.
No, I have been really scared. This pandemic thing is driving me insane. That's why I'm watching all the next level meetings. I'm trying the best I can because things are out of my control. I think I am a control freak, and that is driving me crazy. At the same time that I know it will pass, everything has passed so far. It's still a little mind-blowing in a way, because after you pass 50, you know you are running out of time. You don't have all the time in the world anymore. And I had so many plans that I had made in the end of the last year. And all my resolutions for the beginning of the year are all down the road. And so I don't really know how to deal with it. And
what's your question?
It's
if you could ask me one question, what is that?
Appreciate it, but still, how do I deal with my fear, and how can I go back to focusing and be positive again?
Awesome.
But first, the old cliche, FEAR, false evidence appearing real, an old Zig Ziglarism that he taught me back in the day as my mentor. And let me just give you a quote to put things into perspective. You just said you're 50.
No, I'm more than 50.
Well, it's called skincare because you look about 30. Good for you there, my friend.
That's sweet. Thank you. I'm photogenic. That's it.
Age is only a number. And so when people focus, especially corporate leaders, worried about how to manage millennials and Gen Xers and how they relate to we baby boomers, instead of focusing in on what makes us different, what we need to do is focus in on what makes us the same. Time is the differentiator. Time is the common denominator. Let me give you a powerful quote and then share a story because it's part of my answer. Today, you've never been this old before. And today, you'll never be this young again. So right now matters, and every right now matters. Which means no matter what your past has been, you have a spotless future, which means you can't always control what happens. We said that earlier, but you can always control what happens next. If you spend your day worrying, that doesn't do you any good. And if you spend your day wondering if your glass is half empty or half full, you've missed the point. It's refillable. Thinking positively or thinking negatively does not fill up the glass. The pouring does. It's easier to act our way into positive thinking than it is to think our way into positive action. It's not the sugar that makes the tea sweet. It's the stirring. It's the process. So what we have to do is take action. We can't just sit around and wonder what's going to happen or worry about what's going to happen. Think about what we were talking about earlier with patience and perseverance. Patience allows us to never begin. Perseverance is patience with the purpose, so you know why you should proactively do something right now. So here's the question that's part of your answer, Andrea. Do you believe that one moment in time can change you forever? Do you believe that this particular Zoom call can change your life forever? Do you believe that one moment in time changes everything? I do. Proof. In a negative way, I was paralyzed for 14 months. 16 doctors told me I'd never get any better. One moment in time can destroy us and decimate and devastate us. Or we can be like Michael Jordan, who said, you saying I can't do it? Oh yeah, watch me. And then figure out what to do right now, next. I remember when the Baltimore Colts were behind by like 30 points or something in the game, and their quarterback, Andrew Luck, goes into halftime and he says, man, we got to score, but there's not one play that's worth 21 points. We got to score one touchdown at a time, one play at a time. There's no plays that allow you to just jump ahead by 21 points. It's one day, one moment at a time. One moment in time can change your life forever. Here's my proof. I was on the program with Henry Winkler, the Fonzie from Happy Days, clearly one of the funniest guys I've ever met. He started a 1970s television sitcom called Happy Days. I can tell by your face you don't know who I'm talking about. You need to Google him. He's the coolest guy who ever lived. You've missed out on some Americana, my friend. You got to check this guy out. Coolest guy who ever lived. And Henry Winkler decides, we finish our speeches, and he decides he wants to take some time off, treat himself to a matinee movie. So he slides in through the side exit door of the theater, and he shuffles himself through the aisle. When he finds himself a vacant seat, Henry Winkler turns to sit down in the chair to look up at the movie screen. And the little girl sitting right behind him smiles this giant smile. She points her finger and she slowly says, Fonzie. Henry Winkler immediately snaps into the Fonzie character from Happy Days, swivels his hip, shakes his head and says, hey, whoa. And the lady sitting next to the little girl passes out. Henry Winkler milks the moment. Whoa, I thought this only happened on TV drama. Hey, how cool is this? Whoa. Theater manager comes out, takes care of the woman's needs. She's lying in the aisle, cold pack on her forehead. She's asked one question. Why did you pass out? She said, my little girl is autistic. And that is the very first word she has ever spoken in her entire life.
Wow.
We can't say I'm this old or this young. We can't say, what about me? Woe me. I don't know if I have a lot of time to make a difference. We could just whip out so many examples of guys like Colonel Sanders. That's one of the oldest examples of all time, who started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was over the age of 65. I think it was 67.
That's true.
What we have to do is massage our wisdom. We have to inoculate an immune. We need mental immunity. We need to vaccinate ourselves against this fake news world in which we live and hang around with people who basically say, not you can if you think you can, Andrea, but what are you going to do? So back to my paralysis. I got better. I was paralyzed for 14 months, 16 doctors, 15 said I would never get any better. Everybody says it was a miracle. No, I identified the universal laws. And when I subscribed to obedience to specific laws, it allowed me to put one step in front of the other and do something right now, not letting what I cannot control, keep me from what I can control, like you said. And the two laws of the universe are the law of the harvest. We reap only what we sow. Make every day a revenue day. Make a list of people who suck the wind and the energy from your life and make a list of people you want to meet. If you go to my website, I've dined with presidents. I was in the Reagan White House. I've dined with sheikhs. I've interviewed Michael Jordan. I've interviewed the biggest names on the planet. Dined with Obama, been with Oprah. The list goes on and on and on. And I don't do that for a photo op. I do that because I want to know how they think and what they do with what they believe and what they do about what they think. So just by coming onto this call, you're actually proving to yourself that you're going to not just survive, but thrive because of your mindset shift that's occurring just on this organization that Bob's put together. It's so critically important that we figure out what to do right now. And you can do something when you get off this call. You can do something in the morning, guaranteed it's something. Yeah. And if it's just finding someone who you know can give you some wisdom, figure out someone who knows someone who knows someone who can introduce you and find out what they know.
Amen.
Oh,
Amen.
thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Remember, let me just say this. Remember, it's the belief that creates the leader. Let me give you another formula. It's the belief that creates the leader. And it's the belief of the leader. Oh, no. And it's the belief of the leader that creates the expectations, and it's the expectation that creates the behavior. And I'm surprised that my old buddy Gene McNaughton is not in prison someplace because he read my book back in 1983. How are you, brother?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thanks,
let's go ahead and bring Gene on. Gene, brother,
you
step
hot
on up.
dog.
Gene.
Oh, Dan, I've got my.
I can't hear you.
You're breaking up, Gene.
First speaker I ever saw in my life, 83, 84, Dan Clark.
Wow.
I had to choose between buying his book and getting a hamburger and french fries for lunch, and I chose the book. I did.
I love it.
I'm waiting for you to send me an invoice for the therapy I put you through.
Dan, thank you on behalf of everybody. What a pleasure, man, to see a living legend.
Oh, you're such a kind man. You're the legend. I want to put you on the spot and see if you can get me on some of your stages. You're the one that's making the big splash. I used to do that back in the day with Zig and the boys, and
yeah, he's crushing
my
it.
To ride, man. Can I buy you a new truck? We have witnesses.
My question was going to be, was Sioux City, Iowa, your favorite stopover back in the Dare days?
Yeah. Did you go to East High? Where'd you go?
Yep, I did. East High, Sioux City, Iowa.
Yep. And I remember even coming back and speaking at their high school commencement. Isn't that funny? I would remember that.
It was changed my life. So
it's amazing. And that's to Andrea's point. One moment in time can change us forever if we're just open.
That's right. Amen.
So let me ask you a question, Gene, that would benefit all of us. You've been around the world. You've been trained and tutored by the Tony Robbins and been, business partners with him. Teach us one thing. I would be remiss if I didn't learn something from this. I don't want to just be the only one flapping my jaws. Bring up something that would maybe spawn another question from someone else so we can keep the conversation elevating. What's one nugget of wisdom that you've learned from all these superstar gurus that you've interacted with, man? I admire you so much.
Well, the fundamentals never change, which is, good old Zig Ziglar that said, service to many is what leads to greatness. Jim Rohn talks about that. Tony talks about that. Dan, you live that. I mean, here you are on, 8:30 your time, I think, or 7:30, whatever it is. And here you are doing your thing. And you do it because it's the right thing to do, and you love to do it, and you love the juice, and you love the comments. So everybody, every comment you make, every email you send, every social media note you send, I know Dan reads them. I know I read them. I know Bob reads them, just like you read your own. So, you get these nuggets. Now it's our, moral obligation to share it with those around us. Amen. And if you're always in service, like Dan is, I mean, usually these are an hour call, and last I checked, I think you started at 6 or 6:30.
Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for bringing that up. My clothes have gone out of style just since we tuned in. I need to go to the mall and kind of update my wardrobe so that I'm a little more presentable. Sorry, folks.
I'm listening as we're doing a walk here before it gets dark. Dan, love you, man. Bob, keep up the great work. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your next level connection piece. It's just, this is so fantastic, Bob.
I appreciate you, brother. Love you, man.
Keep in touch, man. Keep in touch.
Yes.
All right, let's go to Dr. Bill Janishak. Go ahead and bring yourself on, Bill. There you are.
Hey, Dan, I appreciate it. I'm taking like so many notes that it's crazy.
Tell me how come I know your name?
Because I'm famous.
Well, yeah, but I've heard several people. No, I'm curious. I've heard your name several times, and I'm like, whoa.
You need to hang around a different 5 people then if you're listening to me all the time. I have a quick question on play the game between the goals. That really stood out. Is that your quote? Yeah.
What happens is if the only satisfaction you get out of a job is a paycheck every 2 weeks, you hate your job. Most people hate their jobs. They only look forward to Friday instead of Monday. They think they're paid by the hour when in reality we're paid for the value we bring to that hour.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is figure out a way to enjoy the journey, enjoy the job, and then the report card. The biggest award I ever gave, I coached high school football for 6.5 years. We won the state championship once. And the biggest award I gave at the end of the year and every week was the practice player of the week, who most often was somebody who never got in the game. He just made the first string guys better. Somebody who loved to run, who loved to lift weights, who loved to hit, who loved the grind and the push. And even if he never got in the game, goals are only an excuse for the game. We play the game in between the goals. And that's where I came up with that philosophy that just holds true in everything I do.
I think it's something that stood out to me. So I'm going to give you credit 4 times and I'm going to steal it as my own. So isn't that how it's supposed to work?
I heard it was less than 4 times actually, you know.
So my question is,
David John's been interviewed a gajillion times during this situation. And the first time he's interviewed, he gives Lewis House, the great podcaster, credit for identifying that in 2008 during the recession, we got Uber, we got Airbnb, we got Netflix. We had these like 8 major multi-gajillion-dollar organizations were spawned and created during that crisis. He gave Lewis House credit the first time. The second time he's interviewed, it was his research. I get it.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm going to do that. But I was going through everything that you've done. What is your process, one, for setting your intention? Like, do you do yearly goals and do those break down? And then do you have a daily ritual?
Yeah, you need a righteous routine. You have to have a daily ritual that gets your mindset right. And if you wake up and do some exercise, regardless of what it is, if you get a sweat up and get your endorphins rolling and push yourself and then take a great shower and get ready for the day. You know, I had on a sport jacket and when we started, I turned on the lights in my library here and I should have put on a sport jacket, but I learned something so critically important a long time ago. I live here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the #1 talk radio program was on KSL radio, and there was a famous guy, he'd been around forever, Doug Wright, just one of the great talk show hosts in the country. And he would be on every morning from 9 a.m. until 12 noon, 5 days a week. And because I had this, I'd just gotten back from Soaring to the Edge of Space and I had some pretty cool experiences, and they ran this big article on me. I get a call from the producer, will you fill in for Doug Wright on Monday morning and on Tuesday morning? So that's 6 hours on the air. And I said, yeah. So he invited me into the station at 5:30 in the morning to shadow him and watch how he prepared. And when I showed up, he wore a coat and tie, and he's a radio guy. And I said, teach me, bro, what's up? And he says, I have to dress like a businessman to help me think like a businessman, to talk about politics, business, and current events. And so now you go into the schools of America and these teachers look like they fell off a flipping hay wagon, and we all buy into it. We all like it because someone has allowed us to lower our standard of performance, and each time it's lowered and we buy into it, we become desensitized to that situation. Do you realize that every single one of us on this call, walked into the same smelly, stinky room that stunk so bad, we immediately kicked into automatic gag reflex, and our eyes started to water and our noses started to bleed. Do you realize if we stayed in that smelly room for 5 to 10 minutes together, no longer would it smell? We had become desensitized, and it now became the new normal. So in this so-called COVID crisis or corona pandemic, everybody is so excited to rush back to normal. And I always want to caution people and say, what part of normal is worth rushing back to?
Amen.
So when we put together a righteous routine, it has to begin with physical. Maslow wasn't a fool when he put that hierarchy of laws together, and we have to take care of our physical needs. It's how we feel. Wake up, do some exercise, push yourself so you break a sweat, come home, take a shower, get dressed for the day appropriately. If you're going to go play tennis, if you're going to go to hike the mountain, if you're going to go to a business meeting, this is me. This is me. No, it doesn't have to be. So that's part of my righteous routine. The next thing begins before the day begins. It's the night before, where I think about what I need to do the next day. And I go over my calendar and I say, okay, who do I have appointments with? And you set up the next day, the day before, obviously. Who are my appointments with? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? But we also have to have a contingency plan, my friends. Back in the day when we didn't have cell phones and we'd go to a doctor's office, and these pompous windbags would make us wait for 30 to 60 minutes. And we're getting disgruntled going, who does he think he is? Why does he think he's more important than me? Why does he think his time's more valuable? And we would sit there and just fume. And now what happens? We go in with 1 or 2 podcasts ready to listen to, with our earbuds ready to go. We've got a briefcase. We got a book to read. We got work to do. And so often now I'll go into the doctor's office and they'll come and get me after 20 or 25 minutes. I'm like, not yet, man. I still got 10 minutes on my podcast. Role reversal. So what we have to do is just plan out what we're going to do. Continuous education. We just need to become better today than we were yesterday. Studying something that is so critically important for us professionally, and then studying something that's so critically important for us personally. Most people who go through a rocky time in their relationship, the time that they take a relationship class or listen to a relationship podcast or read a book on relationships is when they're already going south. It's when they're already in an argument and the accusations are emotionally fueled and it's just unraveling quicker than they wanted to. What would happen if we just took the time to make sure we're better today than we were yesterday? And that's all the righteous routine. This is such a long answer, bro. But I think all of us on this call understand the significance of that. Yeah. And surrounding ourselves with people who will challenge us. Andrea so sweetly said she's afraid, or fear is immobilizing her, or what do you do when you're afraid, or how do you deal with fear? And what you do is you break through the fear. The fastest and easiest and quickest way through pain, to deal with pain, is to go through the pain. Pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain is teaching us, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no mistakes, only lessons. You never lose if you always learn. It's like Conor McGregor. Sorry, I mixed up a talk show host with a fighter. That was pretty bad. He'll track me down and rip my lips off. Sorry.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that, man. That's really great. Just gold.
And we need accountability partners. If it's raining, if it's a cold day and you still need somebody to go walk around the block with you, we need somebody to hold us accountable. Yeah. We can't just go through this COVID situation by ourselves and feel like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Why do it alone? We just need to galvanize and create a tribe, become a part of a tribe like Bob has created here.
Why we have Next Level.
Yeah, right. I love it.
Like minds. Thank you, man. That was
thanks.
Great experience.
All right, Steven, you're up, brother.
Hey, my video's not working.
We don't see ya.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn it on. It's saying no. It's.
I've already broken one of the 10 commandments: coveting your lifestyle and your hammock. Man.
No, it's we've been having a great conversation. The sun's gone down where I am, so I'm in the dark. But
yeah, you are in the dark.
So
wow.
What's your question, brother?
Just before I ask the question, man, so much value.
Thanks, brother.
So much to say. And that leads me to my question, which is, I'd like to find a way onto your podcast. How do I do that? Because I'd like to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, what we're doing, my podcast is sponsored by Sinclair Broadcast Group. They own 193 stations around the country, and they're in about 100 markets. And so I'm under a timeline. They wanted me to have A-list guests before they launch it. So it hasn't officially launched yet, but it will in about 2 weeks because of the guests that I still want to have on my roster before we launch it. But it's called Power Players.
Yep.
And I focus in on the 3 P's: passion and preparation and pursuit of that passion. And so, I interview folks that have incredible experiences to talk about. I had Amy Purdy on. If you watch Dancing with the Stars, she lost both of her legs and made it to the finals in Dance with the Stars. Her story is so incredible. And then the next week I had Amy Cuddy, who has 57 million views on her TED Talk. She's a Harvard professor. So to answer your question, yeah, I want to keep in touch with you, all of you. And I'm going to give you a free download of my book, but if you want to just write down my email address, it's just dan@danclark.com, and we can just stay intimately connected. And, I put together 3-day events, and Bob, he knows how much I admire him and love him. And, there's ways that we could all collaborate and figure out a way to just gather together and finally have that belly-to-belly experience.
Yeah.
And if you'll allow me to participate, I love to talk about my 10 commitments to building a winning team. But my last book, published by Penguin Random House, it's called The Art of Significance: Achieving the Level Beyond Success.
Love
what
that.
I did is I identified the 12 most popular business principles that have actually created limiting beliefs. I threw them under the bus. I challenged the status quo, and I replaced them with what I call the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership. And during a 2-day retreat or a 3-day retreat, we can take a deep dive in all those 12 laws. They're not my laws, they're universal laws, and they're so cool. I also love to engage in public speaking. I do a boot camp, a 2-day boot camp. Maybe Bob could help me put together one. I could come to Southern California. And I love, teaching people how to make their stories funny, provocative, and emotional. I'm the primary contributing author at all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, so I know about storytelling.
Yeah.
And I could help you write a book. I'm a gold record songwriter. We need to talk about that at some point, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's the real
great.
world in which we live. Yeah.
We'll definitely set some stuff up.
How can I miss you if you won't go away? That's a freaking tearjerker.
We'll definitely set some of that up.
And Bob just finished my 3rd book. It's being edited right now.
Nice. Congrats.
See, that's cool.
All right.
See, and I'm an author. I don't know if you golf,
Yep.
but I've got 2 new golf books coming out: How to Line Up Your 5th Putt and Awesome Second Shots Off the Ladies' Tees. So let's talk about writing books at some point on the next broadcast.
Oh, love it. We'll definitely do another broadcast. We'll definitely do it.
Yeah, baby.
Let's see. Christy, you had a question.
Thanks for your comments, Steve, by the way. That's so kind of you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hi, Dan. I just love everything you've said. It resonated so much with me. And I think that we could write a book with what you just said tonight. And it would be a bestseller because there is so much wisdom in what you shared.
Thanks so much.
And, one of the questions, I actually had many, but I'm trying to limit it to one, is you've been talking about universal laws, and I love universal laws. And I'm wondering if you could just share a fun story of, one of your favorite universal laws or favorite stories that include a universal law that comes to mind.
I love it. Most people who study universal laws, they illuminate the law of gravity, the law of physics, the law of mathematics, the law of relativity, the law of energy, vibration, resonance, the law of attraction, the law of the harvest, and the law of progression. And those are laws that are in play regardless if we believe them or agree with them or not. They're universal laws. They're time-tested, pure laws. And that's what my 12 highest universal laws are. They're higher laws and deeper laws than those that I just rattled off. With everybody talking about the law of attraction, and Bob Proctor is a guru, is a friend of mine, but too many people have tried to make it too mystical. If you manifest this, this will happen. I'm like, that's bogus. That's bogus. It's back to too many people live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. There's power in intention, but in football, I learned momentum is only as good as your next play. It's what you do now. It's what you do next. So my 12 highest laws are those laws that most people that teach leadership, they teach the behaviors required at that specific level of leadership to advance to the next level. And the same thing happens with the law of attraction. They try to make it so mystical. We don't attract who we want, we attract who we are. We attract what we believe we deserve. And that's the significance of Bob and this network, this taking it to the next level. This is so amazing, and it's so wonderful to meet you. But having said that, let me just focus on the number one law of the universe, the highest law of the universe. And just give me a moment to explain. So on October 23rd, I had a chance to soar to the edge of space in a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft out of Beale Air Force Base outside of Sacramento. It took us 45 minutes to get to altitude, and it was a 5-hour sortie. It's a classified mission, so I can only tell you that at 70,000 feet above the Earth's surface, you see 2/3 of the state of California. At 80,000 feet, you see mapped outlines of America. And at 90,000 feet, it's this melancholy, sacred, reverent experience where you actually believe you can reach out and touch the face of God. It's a spiritual experience I can't even describe. So for 5 hours, I witnessed the curvature of the earth. I gazed into the endless blackness of the universe and pondered eternity and my place in it. And in that in concert with that environment, I asked a deep question: are we more than mere mortal beings living on a small planet for a short season? What's it all about? What's our purpose? We're all going to die. And then, tongue in cheek, if we're the only ones here, this sure is a lot of wasted space. And when we landed, I had become a curious student of the organization of the universe. I had become a massive student of astronomy and the real laws of the universe, the irrefutable, unchangeable laws that have affected us forever. And so I started reading everything I could. And I focused in on one particular author, for example, a scientist by the name of Wernher von Braun, who's the father of NASA. And he's the one that identified the right algorithms and mathematical equations that allowed us to start the Apollo program and safely put a man on the moon and return him back to Earth safely. Amazing. And as you start studying the organization of the universe, it became so clear to me that there is an exact organization, and everything is in an orderly, it was organized in an orderly fashion. So in the universe was organized by a specific set of laws. Stay with me here. And when we obey, when we first identify and obey this specific law, we can almost guarantee that we will reap this specific reward. And when we disobey that specific law, we can almost guarantee that we will also suffer that specific consequence. And wouldn't you know it, after we land, I go to the movie Hidden Figures, which celebrated Katherine Johnson, who worked at NASA. And in the movie, she was that human computer that all of these high-level thinkers and mathematicians and physicians who were working for NASA were baffled on how they could actually launch astronaut John Glenn into the moon, into the atmosphere, let him orbit in his Mercury aircraft 7 times and return him safely to Earth. And all of a sudden, Katherine Johnson, in a very critical but almost glazed over scene, she has this aha moment and she goes, oh, it's Euler's theorem. And everybody goes, oh, wow, that's old math. Euler's theorem. Euler was a Swiss mathematician. And he published his Euler's theorem way back in 1768. And it was that specific theorem and equation that allowed, without getting into the details, it was about two substances going in completely different orbits and how you needed to coordinate them, which allowed NASA to fire the rockets, to turn the capsule in an appropriate way, to enter the Earth's atmosphere without bouncing off and returned John Glenn safely back to Earth in the exact space that they needed him to land in that specific sea so that he wouldn't drown as the capsule started to submerge. And they said it was old math. Here's the kicker. John Glenn orbited the Earth in the early 60s, and yet they used this mathematical equation published in 1768. Mm-hmm. And there are astronomers and scientists today in the 21st century who also use Euler's theorem. Mm. What is right is right. What is actually a universal law is not debatable, and it doesn't change from generation to generation or economic crisis or not. And so what we have to understand is with the organization of the universe, I wasn't the first one who became so curious about how that affects our human mortality, our experience here on Earth. Mm-hmm. Leonardo da Vinci was the first one, and he drew that Vitruvian model, that Vitruvian man, in that spread eagle position, encased in a triangle, a circle, and a square. And what Da Vinci showed us is the symmetry and perfect organization and creation of the human being. And based on that, he also believed in the perfect organization and order of the universe. And therefore, we on Earth, if we can subscribe to the specific highest universal laws and obey them, we can control our destiny. We can make this sojourn called mortality not easier, but at least simple, because we know exactly what to do and when to do it. So coming to Earth, here's what I concluded. The highest law of the universe is obedience. And all other all other laws and rules are governed by it. They're predicated on obedience. And to test our obedience, we were given what is called free will agency. There are 4 elements of subscribing to the 12 highest universal laws of the universe, highest universal laws of life-changing leadership, especially if we buy into the fact that the highest, number one, first law of the universe is obedience. So to test our obedience, we were given free will agency. So we were always enticed by one or the other. We always had a choice. We could go this way or that way. And to guarantee that our free will agency would always be in play, we were given what is called an opposition in all things. You got to have darkness to appreciate the light. You have to have sickness to appreciate health. You have to have justice to appreciate mercy. You have to have death to appreciate the sanctity of life. And because we were given our free will agency, every person born into this world was born with an inherent ability to discern right from wrong, truth from error. We commonly call this ability our conscience, which means our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. And I don't know if you've been on the call the whole time, but I'll just reiterate an analogy I used. If all of us on this call walked into the same smelly room and we stayed there, within 5 to 10 minutes, it would no longer smell. We had become desensitized. It became the new normal. Isn't that what's happening in our world with fake news and the movies we watch and the music we listen to and the people we associate with? That's why it's so significant that we buy into this call and we completely support Bob in everything he does, especially when we get a chance to go belly to belly. So having an understanding of those 4 elements that tie the human experience into the organization and order of the universe, I can't stop there without giving us the practical application. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. All the information in the world isn't going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. I think that's funny. So I need to give you the practical application and not just teach you the laws of the universe, but give us the practical application. So of course, as a storyteller, I created what I call the parable of the kite. Stay with me.
Okay, you got it.
A gentleman's out in the park. A father's in the park with his son, and they're flying a kite. And the kite is way up into that blue, cloudless, windy sky. And the father says to his little boy, "Hey, what holds the kite up in the sky?" And his son says, "The wind." And his dad says, "The wind doesn't hold the kite up, the string does." Confused, his little boy scratches his head and he says, "Daddy, the string doesn't hold the kite up, the string holds the kite down." His dad smiles and says, "If you think so, let go of the string." Little guy lets go of the string. The kite starts to flutter. The winds of change now control the kite. He no longer controls the kite. The winds of change start to blow that kite wherever the wind decides to take it. Little kid goes, "Oh, what a drag." He starts chasing the string all over the park. He finally steps on it. He again holds tightly onto the string, and what happens to the kite? It once again climbs into that blue, cloudless, windy sky, becomes what it was meant to be, a kite. Incidentally, a kite can only climb against the wind. An airplane can only take off into resistance. We have to remember that fundamental principle. So let's debrief the parable of the kite before I turn it back over to Bob. The kite represents your goal, Christy, your dream, your desired results, your projected outcome. I want a perfect marriage. I want a best friend. I want to start this business. I want to be a successful philanthropist. It doesn't matter what it is. I want to be the great parent. I want to be a great significant other. No matter what it is, we plug that in. That's our kite. The wind is the opposition in all things. So if you're starting an entrepreneurial business, lack of capital, negative family members who say, why don't you just go work for a company, get a paycheck, and get the gold watch after 30 years? It's hanging around with the wrong people. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. As I said earlier, you put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses. It can have that reverse effect. Little kid starts chasing the kite. Oh, wait, sorry. The string represents the rules, the 12 highest universal laws. Him holding onto that kite string represents his commitment to obeying those rules and obeying and living by those 12 highest universal laws. The sad thing is, holding onto that string proved that he was only obeying his dad. That's where we get ourselves into trouble. We obey a person. In a religious context, I see so many people, my wonderful Jewish friends, who stopped going to synagogue. They stopped going to temple because the rabbi offended them. Don't drag him into that. We have people stopping to go. They refuse to go to a congregation of any religious tradition. Oh, he's a jerk, or I didn't feel at home or anything. Don't drag him into it. They're not his 10 commandments. This kid was obeying his dad. When he let go of the string, that's when he succumbed to the temptations of the world. How many of us can identify people in our families and in our circle of influence who say, let go of the string, Christy. Let go of the string, Don. Let go of the string, Bob. Let go of the string, Gene. We're surrounded with fake news. Oh, I just need to give up. Everybody's going to die. I can't do anything anymore. Let go of the string. That explains why what happened when the little kid let go of the string. He succumbed to the temptations and the fake news and world around him. Him starting to chase the string is when his conscience kicked back in. I should have never let go of the string. I should have never stopped obeying the rules. I should have never stopped keeping the commandments. I should have never stopped obeying the 12 highest universal laws of life-changing leadership. And now he catches the string again and once again commits to holding tight to obeying the rules and the 12 highest universal laws, which now teaches him no longer does he have to go out and fly a kite with supervision. Isn't that leadership, management, parenting, coaching 101? Earlier I said it's what we do when the coach is not around that makes us a champion. It's what we do when the parent's not around that makes us a champion kid. It's what we do when the employer's not around that makes us a champion employee. We want to keep the rules and do the best we can and increase our productivity when no one's around. Because when the water level goes up, all the boats rise together. And then here's the best lesson of all. No matter how many times we let go of the string, no matter how many times we say something stupid, make a bad mistake, screw up a relationship, it doesn't matter what happens in our lives. I'm going to get emotional. We can always catch the string again. Always. No matter what. We can always catch the string. If we're willing to chase it, if we're willing to commit to doing what we knew we should have been doing, but we failed to do in the first place. That's why my 12 laws begin with obedience, the highest law of the universe, and the 12th last law, the bookend law, forgiveness. If we live our lives angry or holding a grudge, it's like we're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. At some point, we got to let go and learn and live and love matter.
Absolutely.
Sorry I took so long, Bob, but That was an
Great.
intriguing question, my dear, and I would love to
Yeah.
just have some belly-to-belly time with you because
Oh my gosh, I'd love to
just by
talk.
just by asking the question, I know so much about you already. Oh my gosh.
And can I add something to your story that's occurring to me?
Yeah, please.
When that little boy let go, he actually had a choice. He could step back and just let the kite go and not follow it, but he chose to follow it and chase it and to grab it.
I love it.
Right? Like, so we always have a choice to not, and this goes back to you, Bob. You always say, what would happen if you did and what would happen if you didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's interesting you bring that up
Awesome.
because
Thanks.
what we're trying to do as parents and as coaches and as leaders and as friends, we're not trying to replace free will agency with obedience. You do it because I said so, my way or the highway. What we need to do is inspire one another to want to choose to obey, not because you say so, but because we do.
Yeah.
And if you disagree with that, and to illuminate what you're saying, all we have to do is visit a penitentiary.
Yeah.
And see how the wrong choice landed him and her in a jail cell. So the only thing that really protects free will agency is obedience. Again, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves, which means the why has to be your why. And as I said earlier, when your why is bigger than your why not, you'll persevere, not patiently wait your turn.
Yeah.
You'll proactively take your turn because you know why you should. I'm so glad you brought that up. You're awesome.
Well, I look forward to talking to you more.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We'll do it for sure.
Okay, one more we've got, if you're okay with that, Dan.
Yeah, please. You flatter me.
Okay. We got Flo. So Flo, go ahead and bring yourself on and ask your question.
Uh-oh. Go with the flow, baby. Go with the flow.
Wow. Thank you, Dan, for sharing just so much.
Wonderful.
Just wow. So my question is, for a person that has done so much with such range and had influential people with them being around them, what would one thing that you'd want to have be your legacy?
It's so easy to answer that, Flo. Every day I want people to leave me saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. I want people to leave inspired saying, you know what? Well, let me take it into my formula for public speaking. If you can visualize what I call my speaker's triangle, it's an inverted triangle for a purpose because you can visually see that it's a funnel. Question that everyone wants the answer to. We crave it in one-on-one, 1 on 10 in a boardroom, 1 on 10,000 in an arena. Everybody wants to know, why should I listen to you? It's the credibility piece. Have you done it? Are you currently doing it? Are you living what you're talking about? God, I don't want you to teach me what you know. I want you to teach me what you live. That's a real difference. And I try to do that. I make more mistakes than anybody, but I just get back up and go again. You just do it. You dust yourself off. You say, it's like telling a joke. You're not old enough to remember Johnny Carson. When he was the host of The Tonight Show, he was funnier when he bombed. He's like, whoa, that was funnier than you did, And so I take so much pride in taking a risk, and I do that with humor. I mean, my Aunt Lucy, when she was 63 years of age, she started walking 5 miles every day. Now she's 91 and we don't know where she is. I think that's funny. So question number one, why should I listen to you? Not because you have 3 PhDs, not because you made all this money or you're driving a hot car. It's because I watch how you treat people who can't do anything for you. I watch how you interact with your family and your children. I've always told my daughters, if you want to see how your boyfriend's going to treat you if you get married, watch how he treats his mother. He's indignant and has no respect. I don't want him in any part of our family because eventually he's going to treat you like that. You take a guy out golfing, and if he cheats and he wants you to give him a 3-foot putt, and you don't want to do business with them. It's what they do off stage that makes them who they are on stage. And if there's a disconnect, it doesn't work. So why should I listen to you? That's so critically important, that we are the message, that we live in integrity, whatever that means. Yeah. The second question is most powerful, and that answers your question. Can I do it too? with my past, with my weaknesses, with my limitations, and with my strengths. And if I can't disseminate some stories, make us laugh, make us cry, if I can't teach anybody anything and mentor or tutor, that was a waste of time. What you have to do, and this is what I teach public speaking. I've been teaching for 10 years at the university level in an MBA program. And I teach my students, seek to bless, not impress. And you shouldn't spend so much time preparing a speech. You should spend more time preparing yourself to speak, so you can be the same off stage as you are on stage. But here's the kicker, Flo. If I stand up and I dazzle the audience and they stand up and give me a standing ovation, I mean, if I really blow their minds and they're doing the wave and naming their future children after me, it's only happened a couple of times. It happens every time with Bob. Kind of pisses me off, but I'm working on it. If people in my audience leave impressed with me, I completely blew it. What I need and what we all need is for people to leave us impressed with themselves, fired up that they can do it too. And therefore their desire and their dream, their kite has to be reality. I can't be a jockey. I'm 6'5" and I weigh 235. I've lost 41 pounds since I played football. If a thoroughbred racehorse could talk, he'd look at me like, who's supposed to be riding who, bro? You ain't hopping on me. Jockeys are just the little dudes. They pose for trophies. They're the little dudes and they hop on the horses. I can't I can't get in a capsule and go to space. I'm too big. My shorty was 5 hours long, and when we landed, I bent over to pull up my socks, and I thought, what else can I accomplish while I'm way down here? We took off healthy, and I woke, and we landed, and I was injured. My hip was asleep. I'm like, wow. You know, one night I went to bed, and I woke up with a bruise. I'm like, apparently that's really hard work. Apparently that's really hard on me. Can I do it too? And then the funnel is, if you answer, why should I listen to you, and can I do it too? Then you provide the how-to. It's the system. How do I get from where I am to where I want to be? Don't leave me hanging. That's why I talk about the steps of resiliency. I didn't just get better. I had to obey specific universal laws. You know, the law of sublimation, that was the second law I followed. It's a Freudian law, and most of what Freud taught us was a bunch of bunk. But his law of sublimation is what Michael Jordan's all about in The Last Dance. Most people let pain and sadness and anger debilitate them and hold them back. The law of sublimation says, oh no, I'm going to use it as a motivator. Like I said before, if you tell me I can, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I'll come to practice early. I'll stay late. I'll figure out what to do. And if I can't beat you with my right hand, I'm going to beat you with my left hand. You know? And that reminds me, you know, you're smiling. It's like what we pray for, what we ask for. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're married, Flo, but I saw the wife's prayer. Maybe we just call it the woman's prayer. If I pray to God for patience, when I pray to God for patience so I can understand my man. I pray for faith that he's going to eventually change and become the man he needs to be. But God, I will never pray for strength, or I would beat the crap out of him. So we have to be careful of what we wish for and what we ask for. But just by you asking that question, that's pretty intriguing, my friend. And that's my goal. I just want to make everybody leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. That's just one of my favorite lines. I put it in a song I wrote. And,
love that.
Yeah, it just kind of capsulizes my mission statement.
I love it.
Awesome.
It's too long to put on my gravestone when I die. I think I'm just going to put on there, I'll be right back, or something crazy.
Well, we're going to add you to the Facebook group, and hopefully you'll accept that. And because we'll post this up in there. I'll also get you a link so that you can use it however you want.
Can I give everybody a free download of my leadership book?
Yes, please.
All you got to do is just go to danclark.com/lead, LEAD. And you can try it right now. And once you submit, you'd be surprised what happens. It just gives you the free download of my book. It'll come into your inbox, and we can keep in touch. And you know, and if you do it today, I'm sure Bob will throw in some Ginzu knives or something. You wait, there's more.
That's right. Well, Dan, you know, it has just been such a pleasure to get to know you over the last year or so. And I've known of you for several years. The opportunity to just get to know you, to just hang out has been just great. I'm looking forward to spending some more time with you. And,
Please.
you know, I'm so glad that Dave was like pushing, and I'm glad that Eric, you know, created a space for us to meet. He didn't even know it, and yet it created a great space for us. So we love that. But, you know, I just want to thank you for all the accomplishments you've had are great. And I really thank you for persevering and doing that and overcoming the paralysis and everything. But more importantly, I just want to thank you for being the human being that you are, because one of the pillars I teach is who you are is more important than what you do, because who you are will determine the quality of anything you do. So thank you for being who you are today. And I look forward to having your influence in my life even a greater level.
No, thank you. And God bless all of you. And, you know, this is just, hopefully it wasn't just Dan Clark 6 and 2. I've thought a lot about this and tried to research some laws that affect all of us. And it'd be fun to get together and just dive deep into some of these laws and, you know, find some cool place to just take off our shoes and kick back.
Definitely.
And I can facilitate that, Bob. So I look forward to something like that too, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I do the live once a month, so hopefully when we get back to that, I'd love to have you come out to California and do that. I know Dave Austin and Kathy and I are talking about doing something at their house. That would be right down the hill from you, so we could definitely do something like that and invite some people to come over and hang out. So again, appreciate you, thankful for you, and thank you guys for being on the call tonight. Everyone get out there, be safe, make this week, make it count, and enjoy your next level. Everyone, thank you.
Thanks for having me. God bless.
You've been listening to Your Next Level Now with Bob Donlon. To find out more, call us at 949-542-6398. That's 949-542-6398. Or you can find more information on our website at everythingnextlevel.com. That's everythingnextlevel.com.